The Nintendo Game Boy is now officially 35 years old. Sure, it was released in Japan in April of 1989, but it didn't come to America until July 31st. So let's wish this device, which brought portable gaming to the masses, a happy birthday by looking at its first year's worth of games. That's 35 games released in North America from the end of July 1989 to July of 1990, according to Nintendo.fandom.com. After these 35 games, I'll then talk more in depth about my top, my favorite, well, maybe my most played Game Boy games. Okay, so let's get started with the 5 games that launched with the system in July of 1989, starting with the pack-in game, which is, of course, Tetris. One of the best, if not the best, pack-in game of all time. The controls are a little stiff and there's only one game mode, but this game alone is no doubt responsible for one half of the Game Boy sales. Gotta say, I love it. Alleyway. This is a clone of the classic Atari game Breakout. Knock out the bricks with your paddle, then move on to the next stage. There's really not much more to it than that, and, you know, I liked it. Baseball. A fairly simple baseball game that actually has some pretty good AI. However, the gameplay is really slow and the animation is very choppy. But, you know, it's good enough for a like. Super Mario Land. The first Mario game on the system is a little odd. The characters are just really small and the gameplay feels off somehow. But, you know, it's still quite a fun game to play. I love it. Tennis. If you like the game of tennis, you might like this one. Hitting the ball seems a little off though. I think B is to lob the ball and A is just a normal hit, but it didn't seem consistent. However, if this is all I had, I could grow to like it. December 1989, Castlevania: The Adventure. This is the only game that was released for the remainder of the year, and it was in December. Was it worth the wait? Some might say so. As the first Castlevania game on the system, this one came with some limitations. There's no stairs, and the screen was blurry on a real system, I understand. Also, it gets a little hard here at the end, but, you know, it's Castlevania on the go, so I love it. January 1990, Motocross Maniacs. A motorcycle game in the vein of Excite Bike, only without the isometric view. The controls really threw me for a loop for a while, but I enjoyed it after figuring them out. I like it. Wizards and Warriors 10, The Fortress of Fear. Or is that Wizards and Warriors X? This is a side-scrolling action game that's kinda like the NES game. You play as a knight attacking enemies with your sword and collecting treasure. Graphics are a little bit basic, but overall, I like it. February 1990, Boxxle. A puzzle game in which you push boxes onto certain spots. The original game was called Sokoban, but this is the name I always think for it. It's always that Boxxle game. The only thing about this one is that you don't want to press the wrong button in between stages or you'll just start over. What the heck? Still, I like it. Golf. This skins game allows you to choose 2 different courses and all of your clubs. Wow, that's quite commentary there. Anyway, the huge downside is that you're not given an overview of each hole beforehand. And really, because of that, I have to give this one a dislike. I mean, that's a huge problem. Hyper Lode Runner. The classic computer game where you collect gold and dig holes to trap your enemies. You know, I've really never gotten the hang of any version of this game. Sorry, it's a dislike. Solar Striker. This is your basic space shooter that has nice weapon upgrades. The graphics are kind of minimal, but it does have some bosses to contend with, and I like it. March of 1990, Kwirk. A situational puzzle game where you try to exit rooms by flipping walls or dropping floor pieces. I'm sure there's a lot more to it later in the game, but I found this one kind of fun, for a while anyway. I like it. Malibu Beach Volleyball. A behind-the-player volleyball game when most games are side view. I was hoping this would be decent, but I just couldn't get a hang of the controls. Sorry, dislike. Revenge of the Gator. Whoa, there's a little more to this pinball game than I thought there'd be. It actually kind of reminds me of Alien Crush for the TurboGrafx 16 with its multiple screens and everything. This is one of the best early games. I love it. Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle. Made famous by the angry video game nerd, I found this action game where you collect carrots actually pretty good. Reminds me a little bit of Mappy though. And I like that game, so naturally I'm gonna like this one too. April of 1990, Boomer's Adventure in ASMIK World. An action game where you dig holes in the ground to capture enemies, find the key, and move on to the next stage. You know, this one just didn't do it for me. Dislike. Fist of the North Star, 10 big brawls for the king of the universe. Ooh, a fighting game. And really, this one was way better than I thought. It even has multiple characters to choose from. Yeah, it's no Mortal Kombat, but this effort isn't bad for an early game. So yeah, I kinda like it. Flipull. A puzzle game that severely reminds me of Zoop for the Jaguar. And really, that's not a good thing. Throw blocks at other blocks to knock them out, I guess. I don't know, I don't really care for these kind of puzzlers. Dislike. Heiankyo Alien. A third dig in the ground game. What is going on here? This is a genre that I really just don't care for. But you know, at least this one has some decent graphics. Dislike. Nemesis. Okay, now this is more my speed. It's essentially Gradius for the Game Boy, which is a high-quality side-scrolling shooter. Power up your meter with power-ups, and then choose your power-up. I don't know, I love it. NFL Football. A surprisingly deep, for the time anyway, football game. Every NFL team is represented, and you get a bunch of different plays to choose from. This one was from Konami, so of course it was going to be good. I like it. QBillion. A puzzle game where you play as a mouse trying to lower towers by their numerical height or something. I don't know, it just seems like they were really desperate to release anything back then. I really just don't get this one. Sorry. Dislike. World Bowling. This feels like a pretty decent bowling game because I found the controls to be very intuitive, although I would have liked to have been able to skip the exercise mode at the beginning and just go right to the real game. Still, from what I played, I liked it. May of 1990. We only have one game this month, and that's Kicks, the classic computer game that has literally been ported to everything. What you do is draw lines to create boxes in order to fill up the screen. This is a good version of the game, but it is a little bit slow. Still, you know, it's Kicks, so I like it. June of 1990. Batman. My first thought is, Batman has a gun? Sure, yeah, okay, whatever. This is basically a side-scrolling shooter. Unfortunately though, I think you need to get the power-ups to get past this part. Still, I think this is a really good game, and I love it. Shanghai. I love this game on the links, but not so much here. You only get the dragon arrangement for the tiles. If there's more arrangements, then it sure would be nice if you could select them from the outset. The lack of color hampers the tiles, and switching to the number version is just boring to look at. But, you know, it's Shanghai, so again, I just naturally like it. July of 1990. Bases Loaded. I like this one better than baseball, but not by much. It's faster and therefore harder to hit the ball. Hey, at least it's nice and smooth. I liked it. Daedalian Opus. I think that's how you say it. I thought this was going to be an RPG based on how the game started out, but no, it's a puzzle game. You try to fit the pieces into the space allotted. It's pretty much all it is. Only I'm a dummy and I can't do this, so dislike. Dexterity. An action game where you have to turn over all the squares. If you flip one over, it might cascade to the other ones and knock out your enemies. This kind of reminds me of a game that I wrote for the Atari ST called 4F, so I guess I have to like it, slightly. Gargoyle's Quest. This is a side-scrolling action game where you play as Firebrand from Ghosts and Goblins on a quest to protect your land. I like the twist of playing as a bad character for a change. That was pretty cool. This is definitely one of the best early Game Boy games, and I love it. Lock and Chase. A classic maze chase game that I always associated with the Mattel and television. You can lock doors behind you to throw off the cops, or grab a gem to become invincible. This is a fun game, and I love it. Paperboy. The world's first job simulator has you delivering papers to subscribers' houses. This is a pretty good version of the arcade classic. Only just remember to subscribe or you might get a paper tossed through your window. This isn't the greatest version, but I liked it. Penguin Wars. Try to get all the balls over to your opponent's side before the time runs out. Avoid getting hit by the incoming balls or you'll be stunned for a few moments, giving your opponent the chance to win. Honestly, I was surprised by this game and I had a lot of fun playing it, so of course I loved it. The Amazing Spider-Man. Here's your basic side-scrolling beat-em-up where you play as, what's that character's name again? Oh, yeah, Spider-Man, of course. You can throw webs at your enemies and swing in the sky. This seems to be a pretty okay game, and, you know, I liked it. Okay, now let's get into my favorite Game Boy games, which I probably enjoy because I actually own most of them. Now let me say that I have never owned the original Game Boy, but I do have a Game Boy Color, and the games I own were compatible with the original, so as far as I'm concerned, these count. Let's start off with Battleship. One of the most popular board games ever created comes to the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. However, in this version, your ships can launch special attacks to help you cover that grid much quicker. Check out this one in the final stage that covers about half of the whole grid. Oh my gosh. Submarine Special is the radar. It will help you find ships, and the carrier has 2 fighters that will allow you to hit any grid point you want. The trick here, though, is to destroy those ships as quick as possible so they can't use their special weapons against you. This is an awesome update of the original game, and much easier than putting all those pieces away. Double Dragon 2. I knew I wanted to include a Double Dragon game here because I love that series so much, but which one? Well, the original is pretty good, and the third one is okay, but number 2, whoa, it's smooth and fast, and I love that rising punch that you can do on your enemies. Oh, and that jumping attack you do on them when they're down, that is a lot of fun. Oh no, you're not getting up from this one, buddy. Graphics are not bad for the Game Boy, and there's several different stages. If you need beat-em-up action on the go, you can't do much better than this one. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. One of the absolute best action RPG games ever created. This one actually had me hooked for several months. I remember buying it thinking, okay fine, I'll try a Zelda game since I heard this one was so good, and honestly, I'm glad I did. I played through it all the way to the very end, but never actually beat the final boss, or whatever it was. I don't know, I guess I got distracted. Actually, I wonder if my save game is still there. Honestly, I highly doubt if it is, because it's been a long, long time. Also, I noticed that the Game Boy's not doing any sound. It's kind of sad, actually, that's not working 100%. Also, the game does not look like it's doesn't even want to start. That's a shame. I'll have to try it on the Super Game Boy. All right, let's try Super Game Boy, see if it works there. Ah, well, it works. Let's see if my save game is still there. That's a negative. I kind of expected that after, what, like 15, 20 years since I've had this game. Oh well. Anyway, you know if an action RPG is really good if I actually praise it. In fact, I really love the game so much that I got my daughter a copy of the new version for the Switch. And she says she got all the way through it and beat it, so apparently she likes it too. Operation C. Contra for the Game Boy? No freaking way! I gotta admit that I was pretty jealous for this game since I was an Atari Lynx owner back then. I thought, nah, this game can't be as good as the NES versions. Then I played it, and it blew me away as to how much it felt like the NES games. In some ways, it's even better because you can get the same power-up twice to strengthen it. Imagine the spread gun times 2! There's only 5 stages, but they include side-scrolling and top-down play styles like in Super C. Amazing graphics and sounds make this one probably the 3rd best Contra game ever made. Well, you know, behind the original and Super C. R-Type DX. This was the game I got along with my Game Boy Color. The original R-Type is probably my favorite side-scrolling space shooter, and I wanted an on-the-go version. This one actually includes both R-Type and R-Type 2 in original black and white and color versions. Then there's the DX mode, which combines both games together, but that only works on the Game Boy Color. The graphics are very detailed, even if the enemies aren't quite as impressive. The music is good too, except when it cuts out in stage 2. What the heck? This is a tough game even on easy, but I keep coming back to it because, you know, hey, it's R-Type. Super Mario Land 2. You can't have a Game Boy favorites list without a Mario game, and I think this is the best pure Mario game on the system. I really like how you can go anywhere on the map. This lets you try out different stages for YouTube videos. Plus, I mean, you know, if you get bored or stuck in a stage, you can always move on to something else. Also, this one really plays like a Mario game where the original Super Mario Land felt a little off. The controls in this game are almost perfect. Jumping straight upwards feels a tiny bit off, but nothing you can't get used to. And the graphics, I mean, wow. It's like night and day compared to Super Mario Land's tiny graphics. Oh, and the little Jason masks with knives in them just crack me up. Looks like the Nintendo censor totally missed that one. Tetris DX. This was the other game I got with my Game Boy Color on day one. I mean, it's a must to have a Tetris game, right? And this particular version of Tetris improves on the original in so many ways. First of all, you have 4 gameplay modes. Marathon, which is endless. Ultra is for getting your best score in 3 minutes. 40 lines is to see how quickly you can complete 40 lines. And versus calm is where you battle the computer. The downside is, though, that you can't see what the computer is doing, so it could totally be cheating for all we know. The controls are much improved over the original release. The piece movement doesn't feel as sticky, making it much easier and more enjoyable to drop them in place. Smooth as butter, as they say. You can't go wrong with Tetris, and this is a great version. Uno. You're thinking, a freaking card game is one of your favorites? Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like a good game of Uno? One where you don't have to mess around with shuffling cards or continually getting whipped by your wife. There's quite a few options here too. You can choose your skill level, the designs of the cards, and even a special pack of cards, which includes new ones to throw your opponents for a loop. Cards like All Draw 2 or Swap Hands or Boomerang add to the fun of the game. Also, don't forget to call Uno, as this is not an automatic thing. You can even bust the computer for not calling it. Also, let me just say that I am used to playing this on the Game Boy Color, and it's quite a shock playing it on a regular Game Boy. Having to look at the red, yellow, blue, and green letters versus the actual colors makes it quite a bit more time-consuming and a little bit more challenging. So if I had a choice, I'd much rather play it on the Game Boy Color. But either way, it's still a fun game. Wario Land 2. Why Wario Land 2 and not Wario Land 3? Well, because Wario Land 3 is a Game Boy Color game only, and we're here to celebrate the original black and white Game Boy and its games. This has got to be one of the most satisfying games I have ever played. It's so much fun playing as Wario and smashing the walls and enemies and collecting coins. There's a bit of a puzzle element here too as you try to find ways to get through the stage. Using a bubble to get past this water or throwing an enemy into another, for example. The best thing though, aside from the detailed graphics and great sound effects, is the fact that you cannot die. There's nothing that frustrates me more than having to start a whole stage over again. And because of that, Wario is my new favorite Nintendo character. Sorry, Yoshi. Lastly, here is by far my favorite Game Boy game, and that is Donkey Kong. Holy cow, does this game hit me on every level. First of all, it drew me in because it pays homage to the original arcade game, which, of course, I love. Then it goes above and beyond by being enhanced when playing on the Super Game Boy, which has probably the best outer border ever. But aside from that, this game is so much fun and extremely addicting. In fact, my wife, who is not even much of a video gamer, played this one to the end and was eagerly awaiting the Game Boy Advance sequels. Anyway, the game has you play as Mario chasing Donkey Kong through dozens of stages. Just get the key to the door and move on. But there are many puzzling elements in each stage to overcome. How do you get from there to here, or how can you avoid that enemy to get to the door? You know, stuff like that. The super jump Mario can do when standing upside down is very fun to pull off. So anyway, yeah, I can't recommend this one enough. It's fun and challenging and definitely a top 10 Game Boy game, if not the number one in most everybody's lists. Alright, well there you go, the first 35 Game Boy games on its 35th birthday, along with my 10 favorites. Which games did you enjoy on the original Game Boy? Let me know down in the comments. I want to thank you for watching, take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye everyone.